Alright everybody, welcome back! So here by popular demand, we have the F5C. This thing is infamous in War Thunder. It's one of the most popular premiums, a lot of questions asked about it, so I thought we'd go ahead and cover it here today and just go over the basics, how to fly it, how to perform well in it, how to quickly grind, because I'm sure that's what you're doing if you're buying this thing, is trying to grind your way up to your F14, your F16, your hopefully F15 later this year, but we'll have to see exactly what happens. So when it comes to the F5C, this thing right here is part of the F5 family of jets. So if you haven't flown one of these before, what does it do well? Well, energy retention. That's the name of the game for this thing. It's one of the quintessential dogfighters of this BR. That's what it does really well. It doesn't really go fast, but it has good energy retention in a turn, especially compared to a lot of other stuff, and it also turns very well as well. High velocity guns as well, and what this allows you to do is get your nose on target and basically just spray where you think they're going to be. And quite often, it's pretty easy to get hits. Now, personally, I'm not a huge fan of these guns. I've talked about this in other videos, but I like guns that do a lot of damage when they hit. I don't like guns that I have to sit there and fill someone with lead to kill them. And as you can see right there, crits, hits, you get that a lot of the time in this thing, and eventually you'll get a kill. If you can get a good concentrated burst on someone, like especially if they're not really moving, or if you're able to get like a second or two of fire into them, it will kill them. It's not as if they don't do damage, it's just that singular hits and crits are very unlikely to do consistent damage in this plane, so that is something to keep in mind. From what I understand, the high explosive filler on these guns is bugged right now, so I would recommend running the armor target belts. That way you don't have to deal with it, you just have solid AP slugs going straight through them. It's not perfect, because HE still, if it works properly, does more damage to aircraft, but I mean, as it is, there's really not much you can do. This BR right now is a huge cluster. You're going to be fighting a lot of other premiums. Of course, you can see I'm fighting A10s now. There are tech tree ones in here as well, so it's not just all the premium ones, but you're going to be seeing a lot of A10s, a lot of other F5Cs. In the down tier, a lot of AV8s, MiG-21s, all sorts of things. And in a lot of these games, probably about 80% of the players we see are going to be premium players. And nothing against premium players. I am playing a premium plane right now, but just in general, you can probably expect them to be lower skill most of the time. A lot of these people are level 20, level 30, and even though levels by themselves don't mean anything, in this case it usually means they're just not that experienced in the game. They don't really know what they're doing. This plane is very good at dealing with these players. It doesn't have very good missiles. It's only got AIM-9Es, which, to be quite honest, just kind of suck. They only pull 10 Gs. They have decent range, so if someone doesn't know they're coming, you can usually fire them from relatively far away and get away with it. But they just don't pull. 10 Gs is not much, especially up at 10.3. You're able to fight Phantoms, MiG-23s, and other stuff like that, and the AIM-9E is just really, it doesn't cut it anymore. It really doesn't. It's honestly quite a depressing missile a lot of the time. They'll fire it, and it just barely pulls at all. So, but this plane right here is more of a gunfighter anyway, so the missiles are secondary. You're generally going to want to use them against people that don't know you're there, people that are crippled already and just finishing them off, or just to get them to slow down, because you're going to have a very hard time with that. This plane, it barely exceeds Mach in a straight line. That's why I would honestly recommend just not even running an afterburner most of the time if you're cruising around. It's not going to accelerate you much more above Mach than you already would be going just with a normal acceleration without burner, and it burns a lot of fuel. So now, the Matchmaker is a bit of a difficult thing. I have been seeing a lot of 11.3 whenever I've been playing it, and it's still pretty competitive in this Matchmaker. These rat planes just always tend to do relatively well, so you don't usually have to worry too much about it. But if it gets a down tier, this thing can keep up with pretty much everything else. The problem is when you don't, which you are going to be seeing quite often. Especially if you're getting these 11.3, 11.0 games like I've been getting, you're slower than everything else. So you might want to save those missiles just to make them turn, because otherwise there's really nothing you can do. It doesn't matter if you have better energy retention and better dogfighting capability if you can't catch them. So you do got to keep that in mind. And then, especially with these MiG-23s, if they really want to, you're not going to be able to catch them. That's just one of the limitations of the F5. If they just decide to turn and run away, they do that much better. And since they also have more powerful lenses, they also outrate you. I think I might show that a little bit later in the game. But against almost everything else, Phantoms, of course, the MiG-21s, you're easily going to defeat them in a dogfight. The MiG-21s in particular, they pull AOA better than the F5. But they bleed a lot of speed when they do so, so you're usually able to go ahead and just out-energy them, essentially. And then Phantoms, other stuff like that, they really don't have a chance. Low speed F4E, low fuel F4E maybe, but in general, not really. So you're going to want to play the plane like this, just kind of sitting in the dogfight, trying to keep your speed up as much as you can, because when this thing falls lower in speed, it does have a hard time accelerating. If you're able to keep it around that 900 to 1100 range, you're pretty much golden. The F5 doesn't really like to lose speed there. But even at these lower speeds, you're still able to pull pretty hard, get inside of people, and then as long as you get a good burst in, the guns will do damage, and you got plenty of ammo. So you're able to rack up quite a few kills, even with the subpar missiles. Now, I do see a lot of people that run bombs in this thing. I would not recommend it. It does not have enough thrust to justify it. It's not fast enough, first of all, especially at this BR. You're going to be fighting a lot of stuff that's faster than you. And even if you're just fighting other F5s, if they're not running missiles, if they're not running bombs and just missiles, they're going to easily be able to slot in behind you and catch up to you before you can even make it to the base. You're going to get much more consistent results dogfighting. Even if it's just killing, some ground targets with your guns, which they do a good job of, by the way. You're going to get more RP than you would with bombing, just because it's more consistent, because you're not going to make it to the base most of the time. This thing is just not, it doesn't have enough power to get there. So this right here, by the way, is an example of exactly what I was talking about. This MiG-23ML right here is playing it smart. He's just stuck it in a rate fight, and I can't get my nose around in time. I just don't have enough power is the problem. If I was in the F5E right here, I'd have no issues because it does have more powerful engines, but you see, even when I pop the flaps out for a second to try and get my nose around, I just can't. So if you do get trapped in one of these things by a smart MiG-23 player, which is pretty rare, but if it does happen, you're not going to keep up, and if you keep doing this, eventually they're going to slot in behind you, so at some point you just want to kind of get out of it and just try and accelerate away and reset the fight. They do accelerate better than you, so if he really wanted to, he could have caught me right there, but luckily in my case, he did go ahead and go for the F5C instead. So now you can see he does just run away, which is exactly what I was talking about earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and skip forward in the footage a little bit here in a sec, just because, like I said, I can't catch him. I can barely hit Mach, and he can go Mach 1.2 on the deck. So later on in the fight, I'm just sitting here ground pounding. You're going to get used to that a lot, especially with these faster aircraft if they just run away from you. The 20 mils do pretty good at killing ground targets, so that's what I would recommend. If you want to, if there's only like one person left, then you can land, J out on the airfield, bring bombs. I still wouldn't recommend it because the guns do perfectly fine killing ground targets, and you're still easily able to go ahead and fight people just like I do right here. But if you really want to, at least wait until after the original engagement to go ahead and bring the bombs. So luckily I get lucky there in a head-on with a MiG-23, go ahead and crit him, and that's going to be the end of the match. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. It's a fun plane, just a little frustrating sometimes, at least in my case. So as for ground RB, well, it does work and it does get bullpups. There's better options with the same BR like the A10 or the A7 with Maverick, so I would recommend using those instead. But hope y'all enjoyed the video, and as always, of course, peace y'all.